So, hello everyone, welcome to this meeting, that is weekly series with Thoth Station inhabitants, and we have few topics there. So the first one is Thoth configuration by Kevin. So Kevin, can you?
We actually talked about it last week. It was just about the default managers for Kebashet. And we decided that it will default to no managers if the repository has no Python code / pipenv requirements. And then if it has requirements of pipenv, then it will default to just the update manager.
I saw the recording. Maybe what could be also included is a flag in the manager's listing. So if Quebec opens a pull request, it states this manager is enabled or disabled, so people still can see configuration of managers. They see what managers are available and which are enabled and which are disabled. Would it make sense?
I think so. So you're just saying add like a null flag, or not null flag, just add like null if the manager is disabled, or actually add the configuration enabled. That's true, false. Yeah, I can do that. And I can make them all just false by default, maybe.
And I think we mentioned last time that a suggestion would be to make the PR description a bit more verbose and explain, this configuration enables or, has this, explain what is available and what is disabled, and links to the documentation on how to enable, if that makes sense. So basically explain what's there and what could be there and how to enable it.
Okay. Anything else to this topic? So in the previous meeting, okay, so proposed solutions you have then. Okay, so we can do the next one. It is automate updates of dependencies plus release of image for predictive stacks. The item was edited by Francesco. So can you walk us through it?
Yeah, to be precise, was Christoph, but yes. So if you open the issue, if you want, so we can have a look. So the idea would be to automate the release. So every time Kebashet updates, we automate the release, so we don't need to go there and do the release, because at the moment we need to do that manually. And yeah, the discussion here is what kind of solution do we want to implement this, so we don't need to maintain those repos anymore. Can we automate the release right after the PR is merged? Of course, only for those repos.
I think Dominic had something similar, right? So if some update lands, trigger automatically a release.
There should be an issue. Dominic, do you remember the issue? Where is it?
Which one do you mean?
You were happy to have like automatic release, I think, just for...
Yeah, that was the after... what was that? Release after pull request merges?
So
of the,
I feel like I don't feel that's a good approach for this particularly. The reason is because we also update on transited dependencies. For example, there is an update of just uh, uh, some package for 6 or something like that, and then there is also a pull request for that. I don't think it's I don't think it's a good way to like keep on releasing based on that. Maybe we can do calendar releases with bots. Every week it releases it if there are pull requests already available. But that's what I feel like. I'm I could be wrong as well.
Yeah,
I think
I agree. Oh, sorry, but I would just add that depend maybe, and this can get more complex, but it can depend on the preference of the. Well, this is for the PS repos, but I was thinking longer term. Do we want to limit this to PS repos, and if we expand this to any potential repo, then it depends on the preference of each repo owner. But maybe I'm
yeah. Indeed, the idea was for these PS stacks because it's we have to maintain them. So if the bots
Right.
maintain them, it's better for us. We don't need to go there and do that.
okay. I was like transcripting, but yeah, that might be a good idea. But maybe also what Hashard said, like have some conditions when these releases should happen, because really, if some package deep down in the stack gets updated, not sure if that should trigger a new release. And also, do you have some tests for these container images?
No, we can add them.
So,
You
where
mean
should these?
sorry, but some simple example just to try to run the container and see that works. Yes, we can add them.
Because if
Oh.
bots start adding new releases, then it will be out of our hands, and things might break, right?
Yeah.
So, in which components should this land?
It should be a mixture, I feel. It's definitely Cabbage updates. They are coming from Cabbage, so coming from Thoth. Uh, but release can be, it's like creating the tag, right? That's the whole question here. We can have them in our own instance of AHV CI with one pipeline just watching over this repository. Whenever there's a pull request from Cabbage, it looks for the Cabbage user, and whenever it sees this user has opened it, we can have some certain conditions on when to make a release. If it matches those conditions, then we can create the release. The conditions is important because I feel like we are going into that trap of releasing way too often rather than just often. So that's what is in my mind.
Would this solution also generalize for the mix use case?
I am not. I don't remember Dominic's use case. Is that the link? Sorry, I'll check.
In that case, it's just a matter of enabling that, right?
Yes.
So maybe a parameter in the configuration file, or
Yes, we can start in that way, or we can start even with repository so that users don't have to configure them. For now, we can just test it on our systems rather than giving it away from the beginning. Just try to check how it works. If it looks good, then we can make it a configurable thing.
ACI feature, right?
I mean, we can have it in Cabichet as well, but the thing is, Cabichet should be able to. Then we have to make Cabichet doing the tag release and yeah, further things. If that's the model, we can also do with Cabichet.
The preferred component.
What is the preferred component?
To have this feature. Is it like ACI or Cabichet?
I feel like if it's in one place, it's great. But we like, at least from what I've seen, we are not providing Cabichet as a, maybe we should, but we are not providing it as a release manager. Like, it's not doing the proper release. It's just opening issues and providing the change logs and version update. But maybe we can extend that and do a proper release. It does the tag release, and then that's about it. That should be, if that's the case, I think that would be the ideal from my side. But I think from the team wise, we were doing only release or updates from Cabichet and then doing ASUV. But I feel like we should also add that tag thing in Cabichet, and that would be super nice.
So, any other opinions? So,
So in practical terms, so that issue, Dominique, that you have, would that kind of cover it? That's a question. And I'm asking because that one was suggested to become a kind of an intern project, and I don't know if this would be it moving forward. Does it make sense?
Well, it's not like something urgent, if you mean that. Or
Well,
what's your question?
No, my question is about like kind of the logistics. So there are two issues, right? Actually, three. There's this one in core. There's this one in Cabichet, and there's another one, a related one in core, which might be a blocker. So my question is how to move forward, let's say, and who would, I'm not saying it's urgent, but just in terms of kind of semi-planning, if you want.
Well, I have no idea. So,
sorry.
yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you can continue.
So your feature is more generic, right? You would like to have, for example, a button on GitHub and say if this merges, automatically do a release, right?
Yeah, maybe something more like a template, I would say, but you can also see it as a button in the pull request, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So what about label? Having a label?
Oh, like a release needed?
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good too.
Would it be hard to implement on the AICOE side? So that would be a label. So if a user marks some pull request release after this pull request is merged, then the release is done by AICOE CI. And the other feature would be configure AICOE CI to automatically label pull requests with a label if they are opened by bot. Would it work?
It is doable, to answer the first question. The second one, I feel like we are still doing the same thing. You said if bot opens a pull request, add the label and release it. So it's basically the same thing. of Kebishet doing it and we releasing it, right? There is no wait time. We are not waiting for correct pull request,
Okay.
right?
Right. I don't know how it is implemented, so that's why I was proposing like these two things. Like first is label the request if it is opened by a bot, and the other one is if a label comes by a user. So in that case,
Okay, makes sense. Yeah. So if with the user we can do it, but then I don't understand why do we need bots adding label to the bot one? Like what does that functionality do?
it's for automatic updates. So if a bot opens an automatic update pull request, instead of auto approval, not instead, besides auto approval, the AICO will also add a label, like release after this is merged.
What would the use case of that label be? We add the label, for example, hypothetically. What will we do with that label? Because we thought if a user opens that label, then only we'll release it. So what's the use case of this label?
Automatic update of dependencies in PS stacks, and automatically releasing them. Okay,
I'm still not.
maybe.
Let me try to mention how I see it, and correct me if, but I think, or Hashad, you raised the valid question of maybe are we going to do too many updates? Then kind of a preference is, well, those stacks in particular, those PS repos might want to do, a release every time there is a dependency update. So we configure them that every time PR is merged for updated dependencies, this label is added and a new release is created. But for other repos, it becomes an option that, it can be, those will not have the automated releases, but they can be added later or customized somehow. Make sense? No?
Yeah, definitely. Like it makes sense. The only part which I'm missing is what's the point when to do the release? If you're saying whenever the label is added, if the label is added by the user, I can see that user is thinking this one should go now. So he just added the label and instead of doing a lot of other things, automatically there's a release. So that flow I understand. But if a bot is going to open a label on a bot's PR, then it means it's again the same track because we are not waiting for anything. So it's going to release exactly the moment it's going to merge the automatic update. So still a Sentry update can come in, and Sentry will not be useful for us if we are releasing based on Sentry, right? So that's what. Because if I remember correctly, earlier we also had talked about putting release information once we do the release. So if you're going to copy this from Kebishet description and paste that into the release notes, then think if there is only a Sentry update, why are we even doing the release? Well, is that correct, Francesco? Like, do we want release for everything, or we just need it for real packages? Like for PS Stack, if you're looking at PS Stack, we are looking for OpenCV, right? And if OpenCV is updated, I see if OpenCV is updated, that's valuable because it will change the resulting image in a lot of this.
It should be the direct dependency.
Okay. So the outcome.
So that's why I was feeling if we put this in Kebishet, there would be a value. And why I want it in Kebishet, it's I am thinking it would be easier in there, totally doable in Kebishet as well. What I'm thinking is when Kebishet opens the release, Kebishet knows how to look up the pip file or requirement.txt. So so this release manager will again look up the pip file and see if the direct dependencies were updated by this PR. If it is, then it will mark it as release, and then we can do it. We can totally get this flow in AICVCI as well. Write it up there. It looks up the pip file, sees if this is a direct dependency, then it does that. But I feel like look up on pip file, look up on direct dependencies might be valuable. It's or a good flow. But like if we are going too much into the details, we can start with release on every PR, on every bot, and see how much trap we are falling in. If we are not, then we can continue with it. So to unblock others, we can start with it.
I'm just confused how the new manager would like interact with the version manager. So would we create a new version every time? Would the version manager also manage releases? Like,
It would be on top of it. Like override it is something more that we are adding to a base manager, right?
okay.
I mean,
Because right now the version manager has to finish doing a PR, and that's the reason I think that it's not handling releases is because we have to wait for the PR to merge, and then after the PR merges, we're handling the release. So basically, what we'd have to do is something similar to what we did for the advisor, where we wait for some trigger to trigger version manager again. Or something like that.
Yep. Sorry to interrupt, but I think we are not talking about that part. We are talking a step behind. When there is an automated update, we want the release update as well. That's the question here, I think. So I think the question is, once the automatic update comes, it gets merged, and then automatically the release PR is happened, right?
If a new pull request is merged by AICVCI, then GitHub sends a webhook, right? And Cablehead is triggered again.
Yes.
So in that case, it can check what labels are present and what pull request was merged. If the pull request has a label like automatic release, then Cablehead can open a new issue, new release, and wait for it to be released by AICVCI. Is that correct?
Yes.
In that case, the implementation can land directly in Thoth YAML file in the corresponding or in a new manager that will handle these things, and people can enable them. So the whole workflow of webhooks and things like that is reused. Just a new implementation of a manager that will keep an eye on labels is needed. Is that correct?
Yes. That's
So Kebishot's not actually creating releases; it's still just doing the version managing. Okay, I thought we were saying that we were extending it to actually do version releases. So it's still just doing the version update, and then AIC is still handling the actual release portion.
yes.
Okay.
The question was to automatically do it instead of creating that issue.
Yeah, when you said Kebishot handles the releases, I thought like we were talking about extending it to actually handle the attack releases and all of that stuff.
Yeah, sorry for wrong wording. I wanted to say like opening that tone issue is something Cablehead can.
Yeah. Yes. So it's basically just triggering itself to do a new version. Yeah.
Okay. And then the configuration can state new minor release, new major release, new patch release, like how it should behave. A lot of webhooks. Okay, anything else to this topic? So if not, we can proceed to the next one, and that is new CVE refresh component, added by Francesco.
Yes. So I saw the email. I think everyone saw the email from Christoph that we are not opening PR to basically adjust the CVE. And then I was thinking, why is that? And if I'm not mistaken, we are basically only gathering the CVE at the beginning and send the message. And then Kebeshet is actually looking at the repos and then opening the pull request. But if that message was lost somehow or something in the infrastructure was not working, we're basically not doing anything anymore. I mean, those CV are there, but no one is looking at them, correct?
And why was the message lost?
I mean, could be, for example, if you think about those 2 weeks where the cluster was dead and stuff like that, we might have learned it, but we never went out and we cannot re-trigger it. We don't have a way to re-trigger them at the moment. They are in the database, but they are there.
But this is not specific to CVE, is the problem, right? Or
I mean, for most of the other things, we have re-triggers, like we have package update, graph refresh. So if we lose solvers, they are rescheduled. If we lose, package update checks if hashes change. But for CVE, we don't have, let's say, a refresher. Someone that goes and look into the CVE and then looks into the stack of the users of Kebeshet and then open up a request to update the software stack, removing the package with the CVE. And the other question, actually the tricky one, is the CVE are removed only if we enable the security recommendation, right? But if the user has latest in their repos, then they're basically not interested in CVE, or do we open them in any case? Because the CVE is something they need to fix.
So originally, the security recommendation type was solely for CVE things, and also I think stable is also including CVE information. So maybe taking a look from architecture of the system, so we act on webhooks that are coming in, right? Or we have components that trigger something. And these things could be triggered like periodically. So have a beat in the system and have configuration on which things we want to have beats. So for example, there will be the component can send information about a system, checks all the repos and check if they are having some security vulnerabilities. So in that case, we will check also repositories that were not, let's say, updated or triggered or alive based on webhooks, but we still trigger recommendations or other parts of the system based on these beats. Would it make sense?
You're basically talking about the webhooks that comes from the different repo we maintain. And based on, as we had talked before about that, this could be another thing and trigger, I don't know, this CVE update or whatever we want.
Because the point that Pep gave is worth to consider, because some parts of the system will not be triggered. So if Maya creates a repository and enables Thoth, and will not contribute to that repository for 2 years, hopefully that will not happen. But if she will not contribute to that repository, Thoth will not have any webhooks coming from that repository. And that means no security vulnerability scanning will be done on that repository, right? That's the problem that we are facing.
That's not true though, because we do the internal triggers, which have the stack information for a repository.
Okay. Okay. So in that case, do we need that CV refresh component?
Yes, I mean, in the sense, is the only trigger that we miss. In a sense, there is a trigger already, but only the first time we learn about that CVE. So if we learn about the CVE, then we do all the flow and we open the pull request to update. But there is still that problem that I mentioned of the security, because most of the users, I mean, it's us, have latest. So we are not going to remove that CVE. In that case, we need to decide if actually the recommendation should be moved to security, or that is not something we want, because that would change basically the software stack of the user. How do we filter this trigger, let's say? And that is the first thing. And the second thing, if we lose the CVE, as it happened, those CVE are there, but we cannot do anything now. They are there. We don't have a way to re-trigger them.
So back to that internal trigger. So if CVE update, job finds a CVE, it sends a message, and
Yes.
we act on that message. So update repositories and things like that. If now the question is, what happens if that message gets lost?
Yes.
And one thing is, if CVE update does not send, is unable to send a message, it should fail, right? So
Yes.
it's restarted and it tries to send a message.
Correct.
If the message is sent, then it's up to Kafka to keep that message, keep track of that message.
Yes.
That's the solution that we are using to make sure that these messages are kept and also in good state, right? So Kafka has things to prevent from when Kafka goes down, it should be able to recover from these failures, right? It's messaging.
Yeah, but I don't know if we consider Kafka a database. Like, if Kafka dies, as it happened in the other cluster, we don't recover anything, right, Ashar? We lose everything. We don't copy or store those messages or the state in which Kafka was.
And
So
can
it's
we
basically,
keep?
that's, I don't know. Ashar maybe knows if you can store those Kafka stuff and keep them.
We haven't checked on backup, but yeah, I can check on the backup of Kafka.
Not replicate that functionality on our side. If Kafka has features to recover from failures, I think it should be able to recover from such failures.
It can if it has volume, but I don't know how it's running in the cluster. But I know that it is a functionality that it has.
Yes, we have PVCs mounted to it, so messages get stored there. And if there is only a failure of Kafka, it will regenerate. The pod will start and it will be there. But I thought here it was more about if the Kafka itself is, the whole thing is down and we are going to from zero to smog, like I thought we are doing things like that, then we would have to copy over the PVC data and then move it away. Yeah, that exactly how Kevin said we can do it.
okay, but if I'm a user that has already a software stack and I have a CVE, but you already sent that message and I'm a new user to you, you don't send me that update. Like if I install,
But it should be in the database already, so it shouldn't be an issue. Because if
yeah.
when
No. I mean, if I am a new user and Pillow, I mean, there is the CV of Pillow that was released 1 month ago, so we already act on that. It's no more in Kafka. We already helped all the user we had, but now there is a new user, and this user will not receive that update.
But
But
they should receive it in the first recommendation, right? Or the first
Sorry?
advice. That they would receive it as part of Thomas' advice, let's say.
Not unless they ask for that security stuff, right?
So if they enable Thoth, do we trigger an advice on newly created or newly registered users?
No, but the internal triggers would trigger an advice at some point if there is something to be done, like an hash disappear, then we do that. But and if there is a new CVE, we will do that, but not for the old CVEs.
So there is that initial log, right? So if a user comes to registers Thoth or enables Thoth, we have that initial log feature that basically checks the repository, the state of the repository, and advises whatever is needed. Is it correct?
I think all the to get what Francesco is asking for, I think all we'd really need to do is include CVEs in the latest Thoth advice, but I don't know if we want to do that.
Yeah, that would solve basically the thing.
I just don't know if latest should get CV information.
So as we do it now, we do not consider CVE as showstopper for latest.
Newbie question, but maybe it doesn't make sense. But and I don't know how difficult would it be to have an additional preference, let's say potential option, which would be latest with CVEs or something like that. And we document, if you choose latest, then it's up to you. You're choosing latest. Does that?
So
I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
To be realistic, latest probably won't have CVEs because the latest package usually the CVEs come out months after release, but so there'll usually be a more recent release, so it shouldn't matter too much.
And also the latest recommendation type was added to be compatible with pip, for example. So
Another newbie question. Sorry, but this is a question, not a suggestion. But so the way latest works, yes, it picks the latest, but the best latest, so to speak, right? It's a recommendation. Or is it strictly the latest? Okay, it's always the latest. Okay.
It's approximating latest. It's not always latest. It's
Yeah, I was just okay. I was just wondering if there's a possibility of latest missing a CVE, let's say on a transitive dependency, because it's not exactly the latest, or if that.
I mean, the idea of us should be that if I am version 2 and the CV arrives there and there is no version 3, we should tell them to go back or not. But how do we? I mean, in that case, the latest would not be the one without CVE.
So what we can do, we can guide users also on CVE when they ask for latest. So in that case, we will not be like pure pip or pipenv, but we will also tell what CVEs are present in the stack. But we will not adjust stack anyhow. So if that's the version 2 of Pillow, if Pillow in version 2 has a CVE, then we state it in the recommendation and justification, but we will not act on that. Just say users, hey, this is the latest stack, and here are CVEs. You can switch to security recommendation type to get better recommendations and guiding on security. Would that make sense?
So we basically create a prescription CVE only for latest, but not to do anything beside giving any information.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Yes, that would. I mean, that could be one thing. Even though we are not yet reaching what Christoph wanted, but kind of.
Okay, and what Christoph wanted?
Well, what the dependabot would do. Dependabot does not consider later CVE or stuff like that. If he finds a CVE, will tell you that there is a CVE and that you should change it.
We
Or
will
maybe
do that. If you configure recommendation set to be security, then we do it. If you say latest, you want latest, and you don't care about security. So does it make sense?
Maybe, but I think, Francesco, your point, I think, is that what Christoph probably wanted to suggest is that you always want security, right? Or at least awareness of.
Yeah, at least awareness. But I think with this solution, they will be aware. Then it's up to them to do that.
So if I'm asking for latest, I'm asking for latest stack because I want to have latest, greatest features. So if there is a new PyTorch released, I want that features to land in my repository so I can verify that the model that I'm training is capable of being run on the latest PyTorch release. The fact that training is done, for example, on my local machine, so the security vulnerability does not affect that, right? But if I'm using that PyTorch model for inference, then and it is deployed on some public cluster, then I care about security. And in that case, I configure explicitly the recommendation type to be security. If users use latest, they still get notifications like your latest software stack has CVEs. And we recommend you to switch security recommendation type to have more secure software stacks if you require secure software stacks. That makes sense?
Yes. Yeah, makes sense. And I mean, they need to enable a security if they want. That's the outcome. That's all. Okay. Then in that case, doesn't matter having another trigger, because if they have recommendation security, the trigger will always include CVE in any case.
But then it is important that this awareness is still there, right? And so it should be documented with big flashing
Colors.
signs. And then there is still the question about potentially missing messages, right? That's
Yes, that's another thing we need to have a look, right?
okay.
The backup of Kafka messages.
Okay.
I see people leaving. Do we have another 15 minutes for these CPU family models for prescriptions?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite quick, actually. It's more a question rather than a a topic because we already discussed in the issue in the pull request. And my question is more, if you go to the changes in the files, is how does I mean, if I put those 3 families of CPU, how does Thoth knows that 6 needs to match only some of the models below? Like there is a list of models that include both families. Can we add to CPU family, or needs to be that list with the family there?
So what you are asking is you want to include this sieve only if CPU family is 6, that corresponds to, for example, these 3 CPU models. Then CPU family is 22, that corresponds to other 3 or 4, right?
Yes, yes.
So in that case, in that case, you will need to declare that in specific sieves. So if you have 3 CPUs, CPU families, that should match to corresponding models, then that needs to be basically declared. What you can do, I think it's somewhere, you can do YAML encores. So you state the whole prescription once,
Yes.
and then reference it using encores, YAML encores. Like this. So you declare prescription, and then you say this is the prescription, and the only thing, like repeat that block. This whole block will go here. And the only thing that will change is basically should include part, the hardware part of should include.
Okay.
Or you can,
from
that's okay.
I mean, either I create 3 sieves, 1 for each family, or I do that. Okay. Okay, but then, yeah, so my question was exactly if we need to split that, because, I mean, we don't have knowledge of the models and CPUs internally. We need to state that. Okay. That's all. Thank you.
We could also add these information internally. So prescriptions will not state integers, but there will be aliases like AVX2 instruction set, and under the hood, everything that is AVX2 instruction set will expand to things.
That would be better. I mean, because the case I was considering was the opposite. I know the flags that I want, but I don't know which CPU models have that. So if we would have that, I think Arshad mentioned is in proc CPU info / those. We don't collect those, right? Okay, could be we could add them, like to store them, or is there a place where we can pick them all and store them?
That would be probably handcrafted, or find some database, and that database will be basically in the YAML configuration of prescriptions. One can state, for example, AVX2, right, instead of integers.
Yes.
And that will automatically internally map to, I don't know, 6, that is CPU family and blah 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 model. Another one is again 6 family and blah 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 model. Things like that. Same for AVX 512.
Okay, sounds like a intern project.
Are they not configurable? I thought you can also install the flags in different models if they're not existing. For suppose there's an Intel CPU which doesn't have AVX2, but Intel has the configuration to add the flag, then users can flag them, right?
When you say add the flag means installing something,
Installing,
an
yeah,
extension
to
like
get,
a plugin. Okay,
yeah, no,
I'm not aware.
yeah, I have to check on that too. But
Like, what do you mean by the flag?
the AVX2, AVX512, I think 512 is from Intel, or you can add it on Intel CPUs, so that's why I was thinking if it does not already have them in the model, is there a way to configure 512 to it? And that's what I was thinking. If it can be, then we lose this, right? Because we said it's not available, but the user can install it later.
But
But this is an instruction set, right? You cannot like
Add them.
yeah, my
physically
question was
modify
if,
the CPU.
my
Sorry.
question was if they are unique, like the flags are unique. When I give you a CPU model family, you give me these flags which are unique. Not unique. They are this one for the CPU model, and that's all. That's how it is, right? Or you can change them. No.
No, it's a hardware
Okay.
feature.
So okay,
Thanks.
then makes sense to have this new knowledge, I guess.
But having new knowledge, I mean, you said like learn it, or this is not something you would, or you can learn. You cannot test every. Well, it's better to. This information must exist somewhere. We can pick it up from. Well, somewhere. I don't know where, but there must be a database already with.
Yeah. But for example, I was thinking in the future, maybe, for example, the deployment that I was trying to do with Neural Magic does support only 2 flag, so only certain CPU models, right? And we don't even know if they are available and how to assign them. So I ask for the node feature discovery plus a way to know also the flags for each CPU, right? So maybe there is a pipeline that can check what kind of CPU are available in that cluster. And if the flags are the one that you want, then you can discover which node has that. And then you can actually do the deployment once you know what is the node with that CPU. Because the problem I had right now is that Smaug does not have AVX2 or AVX512. So the pipeline fails at the moment. I mean, this would be a scenario maybe and something in the future that we can also do. If makes sense.
So on the client side, the discovery will be still the same on Tamus. So Tamus discovers CPU, family, CPU model, and sends it to the backend. Now the backend, the current implementation checks if these really match. But we can make it one level higher and ask for features that these CPU families and models provide. So if that will be AVX2 enabled CPU, the backend knows it based on the database and can further guide the resolution process. So how it will look like? So as in your example, we have that pipeline unit that is of type C. And right now there are CPU families, but we can have directly like CPU features, and here will be AVX2, AVX12, I don't know, that makes sense. And this internally will be mapped to CPU family and CPU model.
Yes. Yeah, this would have been my first thing I wanted, but we don't have that yet.
Okay, anything else?
No. Do we want to convert in a issue and maybe someone will work in the future?
Definitely. Can do that. Okay, so action items here is the database of CPU features and have it in advisor. The other one is enable CVEs in latest, but do not act on them. And the other one is implementation of that thing, a new manager in Quebec. Is that correct?
Yes, with the
Yes.
the Kafka thing.
And Kafka thing, right? So where is that Kafka?
It should be in the action in the CVE, like to have a backup of the Kafka messages.
And it's required not only in this scenario, but in general, because if we start losing messages, basically the whole architecture is relying on Kafka. And we should also make sure that if we are not able to publish a message, that the given component fails. So if CV update is not able to publish a message, the component gets restarted in the cluster. Do you know if that's the thing?
I think we flush the messages which we can, and then we close.
You flush them, but no, this is if the message cannot be sent initially, right?
I think Firu said like when like CV job runs, it creates messages. So
Yeah.
if one of them is not able to be sent, then it should be stopped or restarted. That's what he said. But
Yes. Is this
as
happening or yeah?
so what I remember is what we do is at the very end we try to accumulate in batches and then we send out everything. So yeah, I don't think we are doing a stop anywhere or restart anywhere.
I think we can verify, right?
Mhm.
And also the CVE update or all the components that store information and send messages should act like try to send a message. If the message is successfully sent, then store information in the database. Because if it will be the other way around, like store information in the database and send the message. That will not handle cases when the message is not sent properly. Does it make sense? Kevin, have you encountered these issues? Because you experimented a lot with Kafka Producer. Ah, okay. So So Kevin is writing into the chat. He cannot speak. I think that it is a bad practice. If Kafka goes down, it will pause all ingestion, and I think that's correct, right? Because the whole ingestion should be stopped, and we rely on Kafka to be up, so the whole system can send messages around. Does it answer your question, Kevin?
It's unclear to me what is bad practice. The problem is, so if we should cover this situation that Kafka goes down, right, and make sure that when it comes back up, well, first we need to make sure that the producers, as you said, are aware that something did not get sent and that this is not lost, right? And then when Kafka is back, they can be sent again.
So they should be in crash loop until the Kafka is up and they are able to send messages.
Yeah, so we should
That's why.
test. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay.
But I'm not sure if I believe I didn't understand Kevin's questions or the comment about bad practice. Okay.
So messages make sense. Okay, so we have stuff to do. Anything else? Not to forget anything.
No, maybe next time. It was, I think, Tielgen, you saw the PRE open, so maybe we can discuss and give him some more directions. Because I don't know if he can join our meeting.
Is Tamos Discover and Tamos what provides?
Yes.
Yeah, so we can do that next time.
Perfect.
Okay, anything else? If that's it, thank you and see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.